Behind the Line, episode 12. I'm your host, KC. Got a big show for you today. We're going to get to the good, the bad, and the ugly of this past weekend in just a second. I had a really great weekend in New Orleans this past weekend. If you've never been down to New Orleans, then you really don't know what you're missing out on. I live pretty close, so I go regularly, and every time I go, it gets harder and harder to leave. I've been all over the country. There isn't a city in the United States that has the vibe that New Orleans has. It's special. The atmosphere in downtown New Orleans, especially on a weekend where the Saints have a home game, the women that are walking around wearing next to nothing, showing their boobs for some stupid-ass Mardi Gras beads, or just for the hell of it, the constant party, the city literally never sleeps. And it's easy to drop a lot of money over a weekend in New Orleans. It really is. People within the NBA community have said it for years that the city of New Orleans doesn't support the Pelicans. And I've always kind of wondered where this narrative came from. Now, do we go out when the Pelicans are the drizzling shits and watch them? Of course not. Do fans in Detroit, Milwaukee, or Portland go and watch their team when their team is at the bottom of the league? No. Hell, Atlanta can't sell out Phillips Arena when the Hawks are winning. Atlanta is one of the worst sports cities in the country. The Braves, they can't draw flies to dog shit. So I don't understand why the NBA community has said it for years that New Orleans is not quote-unquote a basketball town. You can say what you want about the city of New Orleans, but one thing you can't say is that we don't support our sports teams. When the Pelicans are good or even decent, the arena is sold out. I went to just about every playoff game a couple of years ago when they opened up against Portland and then they went to the second round against the Warriors. I watched the closeout game in Game 4 against the Blazers. I was there when the Pels beat Golden State in Game 3. The atmosphere in the Smoothie King Center was electric the entire playoff run. It was electric throughout that season. DeMarcus Cousins went down in January, and then Anthony Davis went on that tear. And the regular season, the last 3 or 4 months, that arena was sold out just about every game. The atmosphere during that playoffs was equivalent to the atmosphere on Sundays in the Superdome. The crowd was loud the entire game, opening tip to the final buzzer. So, it's always puzzled me why New Orleans gets a bad reputation in NBA circles. I don't understand it. This past Saturday, 10,000 people came out to watch Zion Williamson and the Pelicans scrimmage. 10,000 fans came out to watch a fucking scrimmage. The city is on fire right now for this team. The Saints are always going to get the love in New Orleans. They're always going to be number one. But I don't want to hear anyone saying that the Pelicans are the redheaded stepchild in New Orleans anymore. Gail Benson has made them a priority. Brought in David Griffin as general manager. New medical staff. New trainers. The Anthony Davis situation could have set this franchise back 3 to 5 years. Yes, we lucked out in the lottery. But David Griffin has done a magnificent job of turning around the fortunes for the Pelicans. Signed J.J. Redick. Brought in Derek Favors. Griffin has made this team attractive to free agents. And remember when the media was saying that Zion Williamson was unhappy about being drafted to New Orleans? That turned out to be some bullshit, didn't it? Dude is having the time of his life in New Orleans. He's at Saints home games. Saturday, he's singing and dancing with a microphone at midcourt, entertaining the crowd. This Pelicans team's going to surprise people. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to win the West. But I could see them as a 5 or 6 seed in the playoffs. They've got a good mix of young guys. They've got good veteran leadership. J.J. Redick has been through the playoffs many times. Drew Holiday is a proven leader. Alvin Gentry, he's not my favorite NBA coach, but after the debacle that was last season, he deserves to coach a team like this and to be given an opportunity. It's going to be a good year for the Pelicans. I can't wait for the NBA to tip off. All right, switching gears, we had a great day of NFL football yesterday. About to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. Am I the only one that's noticed, though, that Tom Brady hasn't looked like Tom Brady the past 2 weeks? The game against Buffalo, I can let it pass. The Bills got a great defense. But yesterday against Washington, he was god-awful in that first half. For the second week in a row, I saw Tom Brady make a poor decision in the red zone. Throwing a ball as he's getting hit off his back foot ends up in an interception. I can't remember the last time that Tom fucking Brady has made a poor decision in the red zone 2 weeks in a row. Lucky for him, I think this is one of the better Patriots teams that he's had around him throughout his career in New England. Legit defense, good running game. Josh Gordon is an absolute beast at wide receiver. Seems to finally be taking his craft seriously. If you looked at Brady's stat line, you would think that he had a great game yesterday, but in my opinion, he didn't. These miscues in the red zone are very un-Brady-like. He just doesn't make mistakes like that. Now, New England should still win the AFC East. I'm not saying that Tom Brady has fallen off by any stretch. He's just had two, un-Brady-like weeks in a row. I don't think Buffalo has the talent offensively to knock off the Patriots in the AFC East. If the Bills could put some talent, some good receivers around Josh Allen, I think they could be a real threat in the AFC going forward. All right, let's get to the good and bad and the ugly. The good. Going to start the good this week with Teddy Bridgewater and my New Orleans Saints. 10-Yard Teddy has been his nickname, and rightfully so. His first two starts against Seattle and Dallas, he didn't hit any passes over 20 yards. Every pass he threw was dink and dunk, short yardage passes. I thought he was god-awful in that game last week against the Cowboys. But yesterday, Teddy Bridgewater looked like a Pro Bowl quarterback. After an early first quarter interception that was actually a good throw that bounced off of Alvin Kamara's hands, Bridgewater was dominant the rest of the game. He decimated the Tampa secondary, completed 77% of his passes, 314 yards, 4 touchdowns. The Saints offensive line, which is one of the better units in the league, gave up 0 sacks. This offensive line hardly ever gives up sacks. More importantly, the penalties were limited. This offensive line has killed the rhythm the last couple of weeks with holding penalties, false starts. You name it, they've done it. But against Tampa, they held up and they played well. The penalties were somewhat limited. We cannot call him 10-Yard Teddy anymore. He was throwing the ball downfield all over the Tampa Bay defense. Shaq Barrett, who was the NFL's Defensive Player of the Month in September, was silent the entire game. Barely heard his name. First play of the third quarter, Bridgewater hits a 42-yard pass to Michael Thomas. The city of New Orleans, it was good to see them get behind Teddy Bridgewater. Several times throughout the game, you could hear them chanting Teddy's name. After every Saints score in the Superdome, they play this Yin Yang Twins song, Stand Up and Get Crunk. You can hear it sometimes if you're watching it on TV. And the fans normally sing along with it. But Sunday afternoon after every score, all you heard was the crowd yelling, Teddy, Teddy. Bridgewater had one of the best games of his career. As I've been saying all season, this Saints defense is legit. Call me a homer if you want, but this defense is top 3 in the league. Elite pass rusher in Cam Jordan. Elite linebacker in Demario Davis. I don't care what anyone says, Marshawn Lattimore is an elite corner. This Saints team is tough to beat. Jameis Winston and the Bucs came into Sunday's game as the hottest offense in the NFL. And they were completely shut down by the New Orleans defense. 6 sacks. Winston was under pressure all game long. He had 2 interceptions called back because of penalty. If you take away the last drive of the game, which the Saints basically gave to Tampa, there was under a minute to go. The game was fucking over. New Orleans was up by 14. Tampa had no timeouts. It was it. You take that drive away. This Tampa offense only had 182 yards and 17 points. This from an offense that put up 464 yards and 55 against the Rams the week before. 499 yards against the Giants. They were completely dominated by Dennis Allen in this Saints defense. When Drew Brees went down with injury, I'll be honest, and you heard it on my podcast, I was extremely concerned about my Saints. I was super critical of Bridgewater. I was hoping that they could just go 3-3, and in my opinion, even that was being optimistic. Teddy Bridgewater is 3-0 right now. The Saints have a real shot of going 6-0 in Drew Brees' absence. I said it last week after the Dallas win. I think that the Brees injury is going to be a blessing in disguise for New Orleans. Last 2 years, he has not looked the same late in the season and going into the playoffs. Brees is going to be well rested to close the last half of the year. And if Bridgewater continues to play like this, he could be the starter after Brees retires. Now, I don't want to get it caught up here with Teddy's big game yesterday. I'm not crowning his ass just yet. Tampa has one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. Yeah, they rank 31st, so bottom of the barrel. But if Teddy can do what he did Sunday to the Bears defense on the road in a couple of weeks, then I might be sold on it. Next up in the good, Kirk Cousins. I destroyed this guy last week. So it's only fair to give him credit when he deserves it. Cousins played like a man on a mission yesterday against the New York Giants. This dude was lights out. I said it in my NFL picks. I loved the Giants getting 5 points at home last week. That I couldn't swallow that many points, especially with Kirk Cousins on the road. I was dead wrong. This guy proved me wrong. 82% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns. More importantly, 0 turnovers. Over 300 yards passing. First 300-plus yard passing game of the season for Kirk Cousins. This was absolutely the performance the Vikings needed from him. This locker room was on the verge of a revolt last week after his disastrous performance in Chicago. Okay, that's enough credit given to Kirk Cousins. That's all I can muster up. I still feel like he doesn't belong under center in the NFL. One big game against a shitty defense doesn't impress me much. This Vikings team is loaded. With the talent this team has offensively and defensively, they should be sitting at 4-1 right now. That loss last week in Chicago was inexcusable, in my opinion. And Kirk Cousins shoulders the blame for that loss. I mean, he was god-awful in that game. This schedule is about to get really tough for Minnesota. And I think the real Kirk Cousins is going to return. This guy completely disappears in big games, especially on the national stage. Oh yeah, he looks real great against the Giants on noon, 1 o'clock on Sunday. But you put him on Monday Night Football, you put him in a 3 o'clock game, you put him on Sunday Night Football, he fucking disappears. Check out the next 5 weeks for Minnesota. Eagles at Detroit, Washington at Kansas City, at Dallas. The Vikings will be lucky to go 2-3 over that stretch. Philly, Detroit, and Kansas City should be losses. I know fans in Minnesota are showing Cousins some love right now, thinking he's righted the ship, that this is going to be the quarterback they'll see the rest of the season. That is not going to be the case. Like I said last week, this dude's been in the league for 8 years now. He's 31 years old. His record against winning teams is 4-27. With 4 wins in his career against good opponents, you're expecting me to think that he's going to face 4 teams with winning records over the next 5 weeks and win a majority of those games? Get the fuck out of here. I think Kirk Cousins will return to form, and we will be hearing the same thing that we heard out of Minnesota last week. All right, moving on. I've been saying the last couple of weeks that I think Kyle Allen is going to end up being the permanent starter in Carolina. The NFL is a crazy league. Cam Newton was the number 1 pick in the draft. Kyle Allen was signed as an undrafted free agent out of Texas A&M. Yet, Allen has completely turned this team around, and the Panthers are winners of 3 straight. This guy had the worst game of his season on Sunday against Jacksonville. And it was still a relatively easy win for Carolina. Christian McCaffrey had a huge game Sunday. He ran all over this Jaguars defense. What I really like about Kyle Allen, he takes great care of the ball. No turnovers through 3 games. That is fucking huge. This Panthers team was going nowhere under Cam Newton. They were 0-2. Newton was god-awful the first 2 weeks of the year. All opposing defenses had to do was load the box to contain Christian McCaffrey, because they knew that Cam wasn't going to burn them through the air. There's still no timetable for Cam Newton's return from his injury. However, if Ron Rivera benches Kyle Allen and gives Cam the starting job back, he should be fired immediately. I don't care how much they're paying Cam Newton. Kyle Allen has this team rolling. I think Carolina is the only team in the NFC South that has a chance to challenge the Saints for the division. All right, let's get to the bad for the weekend. The Redskins finally fired Jay Gruden Monday morning. And damn it, he fucking deserved it. Choosing to start Colt McCoy over Dwayne Haskins was basically Jay Gruden begging to be fired. I understand that Haskins looked bad last week against the Giants, but come the fuck on. You choose to start Colt fucking McCoy in his place? Are you fucking kidding me? This guy's a known bum. He's so bad that the Cleveland fucking Browns got rid of him. No thank you, Colt McCoy. We no longer need your services. We've been doing just fine the past 30 years, losing on our own. He's 7-21 in his career. What'd you think, Jay Gruden? That Colt McCoy was going to step up and save your fucking job? Against Tom Brady? Get the fuck out of here. That's exactly what the Washington Redskins said. As expected, McCoy was awful yesterday. I was actually impressed with the effort of the Redskins defense. They came to play, or in the first half anyway. But Colt McCoy was so fucking bad that by the second half, the Redskins defense just seemed to give up. On 27 attempts, McCoy only managed to throw for 119 yards. That is mind-numbingly bad. You want me to sit here and believe that he gave Washington the best chance to win yesterday? The Redskins would have been better if they just handed the ball off the whole fucking game. I know I sound angry about this, but it just pisses me off what Jay Gruden has done to Dwayne Haskins to start his career. I understand he wasn't, quote, your guy. But that's no reason to torpedo his career after one bad game. I'm not a fan of the Washington Redskins. Give a fuck if they win or lose. But I hate to see a young guy start his career off like this. head coach, well, now former head coach, completely sabotaging him. It's absurd. And I'm glad Jay Gruden was fired. He fucking deserved it. Bill Callahan's taking over as interim head coach. I hope he treats Haskins better. At least gives him a chance. This team's going nowhere this season. It's over. They're 0-5. Let's see what Dwayne Haskins can do. Now, I don't think firing Jay Gruden is going to magically turn the Redskins around. How general manager Bruce Allen still has a job is beyond me. Since he's taken over in 2009, Washington's made the playoffs twice. Lost both games. He needs to get the fuck on as well. This guy's been god-awful drafting players. But until owner Dan Snyder sells this team, it's going to continue to be this way in D.C. Snyder is the worst owner in professional sports. Not even close. In the 20 years he's owned the Redskins, they've made the playoffs 5 times and won twice. This franchise hasn't won a playoff game since 2005. I'd be embarrassed to be a fan of the Washington Redskins. Next up in the bad, my boy Lamar Jackson. Oh, what's happened to my boy Lamar Jackson? I was so high on him to start the season. So a lot of improvement in his game over last season. He improved a lot over the summer, I thought. He was running less, better passing in the pocket. But the last 2 weeks watching him play has been tough. He was outplayed by Baker Mayfield last week. And yesterday, he damn near lost that game against a Pittsburgh team playing their third-string quarterback for most of the second half. Lamar Jackson was god-awful. 161 yards, 3 interceptions, 5 fucking sacks. It's not like this Steelers defense is anything special. Jackson has somehow managed to get worse every week this season. I'm concerned about this Baltimore Ravens team. They were lucky to win that game yesterday. They've had a relatively easy schedule thus far. Really, the only tough game going in was against Kansas City. Their schedule is tough to close out the year. The defense in Baltimore has regressed. This isn't the Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs beat the hell out of your opponent defense. They can't defend against the pass. Patrick Mahomes lit them up. Baker Mayfield lit them up. They gave up 23 points to a Pittsburgh team that was literally running out of quarterbacks by the end of that game. By the way, did you guys see that hit on Mason Rudolph? He got sandwiched between 2 Ravens defenders, knocked unconscious. He was literally out cold before he hit the ground. Of course, there was a late flag because you can't look at a fucking quarterback in this league anymore without getting a flag thrown on you. The hit was clean in my opinion, but it was still brutal. Anyway, Lamar Jackson doesn't have a good enough defense to overcome these turnovers. I talk about this all the time when I mention the Buffalo Bills. You can't throw 3 interceptions and expect to win in this league. You just can't do it. Baltimore got lucky yesterday. Mainly because the Steelers returned the favor with 2 turnovers of their own. This Ravens defense has already given up over 500 yards twice in 5 games. That is unheard of in Baltimore. They gave up 530 yards to Baker Mayfield and the fucking Browns, who are struggling right now to score in San Francisco as I'm watching Monday Night Football. I don't think this is a playoff team. But the AFC North Division is so bad right now that Baltimore might literally back into the playoffs by default. All right, moving on. The Atlanta Falcons are so bad right now. I've never been a Matt Ryan guy. Always felt he was overrated. I compare him to Kirk Cousins. Matt Ryan looks good on paper, but it does not translate into winning games. Sure, he puts up great stats. His numbers are great. But time and time again, season after season, this guy continues to be a disappointment. There is no reason the Falcons should be 1-4 right now. You have Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. A huge target in Julio. Speedy receiver with Ridley. Matt Ryan's thrown for over 300 yards in every game this season. 12 points against Minnesota. 10 points against the Tennessee Titans. Most of the points scored against the Texans Sunday were in garbage time. Like I said, he's a stat stuffer. Atlanta might have the worst defense in the league. They give up over 30 points a game. That's college level defense. They don't force turnovers, bad against the run, atrocious against the pass. This damn defense doesn't do anything well. The Falcons' defense gives up points on 51% of their drives. That is fucking horrible. Basically, every other drive the opposing team is scoring points. I don't care if you have Tom Brady under center. You can't win with defense this bad. Owner Arthur Blank was interviewed after the game yesterday. And a reporter asked him about the status of head coach Dan Quinn. Arthur Blank said the current coaching staff led them to the Super Bowl and is exactly what they need to turn things around. I'm paraphrasing there. I couldn't disagree more. First off, Dan Quinn gave up a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. He started playing it safe, playing not to lose instead of playing to win. You cannot win that way. Secondly, since that Super Bowl run, Dan Quinn is 18-19. In his 5 years in Atlanta, he's winning 54% of his games. Last 3 years, only 49%. I think it's time to blow this thing up in Atlanta. Firing Dan Quinn is a start. But I think the real problem is Matt Ryan. Yes, the defense needs to be improved. There's no doubt about it. But they blamed injuries last year for the reason they had a bad season. What is the excuse this year? Matt Ryan is not a franchise quarterback. That stupid nickname he has, Matty Ice. I hate that fucking nickname. Matty Ice. Ice cold maybe, because the fucking guy doesn't win football games. This guy is the equivalent to Kirk Cousins. He's Kirk Cousins' older brother. He will beat the teams he's supposed to beat. But he will generally lose the big games. Alright, let's get to the ugly. Why does the NFL have 2 teams in Los Angeles? I feel so bad for Phillip Rivers. This guy is a Hall of Fame quarterback. And he plays 16 road games a year. Denver was in Los Angeles on Sunday. Now, the Broncos aren't a team with a strong national following. They're not a Dallas or a Pittsburgh. That fucking stadium in Los Angeles was flushed with orange jerseys Sunday afternoon. An 0-4 Denver Broncos team coming into that game had more fans in the stands than the home team Chargers. Same case with the Rams. Every, quote, home game they have, the opposing team has more fans in the stadium than the Rams do. It's ridiculous. Also, they've got to get the Rams out of that Rose Bowl as soon as possible. That stadium is fucking awful. I know it's legendary and historic in college football, but it's ugly and it's not fit for the NFL game. It's trash. I understood why the NFL moved the Chargers out of San Diego, but I didn't understand the move out of St. Louis. St. Louis supported the Rams a whole lot better than Los Angeles does. Just face it. Los Angeles is not and never will be an NFL town. It's just not going to be. There's a reason that the Raiders and the Rams left the first time. It's not fair to guys like Phillip Rivers, who has worked 15 years building his legacy and a Hall of Fame career. And he's got to play 16 road games every season. They never have a home field. All right, next up. You may have noticed that I don't discuss Major League Baseball on this podcast. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, baseball, in my opinion, has become irrelevant in America. The sport no longer has any marketable star players. When I was growing up, you had guys like Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Derek Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr. I could go on and on. You saw these guys everywhere. TV commercials, endorsement deals. That's no longer the case. Tell me the last time you saw a fucking Major League Baseball player on a commercial. I don't know when. I used to be a big Major League Baseball fan. I really did. But ever since they removed the steroids and the other PEDs, the game has just gotten boring. Other than Mike Trout, I have a hard time naming another baseball player. And I'm a diehard sports fan. I'm not a casual sports fan. Most of the guys playing the game come from foreign countries. They tried to market Yasiel Puig, or whatever the fuck his name is, a couple of years ago. Didn't work out. He was a fad. Secondly, I don't cover baseball because, for the most part, you guys aren't watching. You don't believe me? They released the weekend ratings for the baseball playoffs this past weekend. I saw this article that were praising these baseball ratings. How much of an improvement they were over last year. Thursday's Cardinals-Braves game was watched by 3.5 million people. That's pathetic. To put it in perspective, the Sunday night Colts-Chiefs game was watched by 18.6 million. I'm sure there are baseball purists out there losing their mind over me saying this. But just face the truth. Major League Baseball is no longer popular in America. It's just not. When you watch ESPN over the summer, when the NBA's not going on, the NFL's not going on, SportsCenter is still led by the NFL and the NBA. You watch it in July, it's led by NBA free agency. You watch it in June, it's led by the NBA Finals. You watch it in August, it's led by NFL preseason and college football previews. Baseball no longer has a month in the year where they are the primary sport. The NFL's huge. The NBA gets more popular every year. The NHL is even gaining steam. Every other major sport in this country, besides redneck NASCAR, is progressing. By the way, I don't even consider NASCAR a sport. Everybody can fucking drive. But every other sport is progressing, except Major League Baseball. They are behind the times. The thing is, I'm not sure how they fix the problem. People my age, the millennials, we don't watch baseball. The game is too slow. Last year, the Lakers and the Warriors, they had a preseason game that was watched by 2 million people. A fucking preseason game. 2 million people. And Major League Baseball is trumpeting 3.5 million for a playoff game like it's a good thing? Get the fuck out of here. That's how bad things have become for Major League Baseball. I remember back in the 90s, the World Series used to be watched by 20 to 30 million. Now you're drawing 3.5 million. Last thing before I get out of here, and this was the ugliest thing from the weekend. Once again, I'm going to toot my own horn. KC was right about Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. They were absolutely embarrassed at home Sunday against Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. This game was never close. Midway through the third quarter, Dallas had 0 points. 0 points from this high-powered Cowboys offense. This Dallas team is completely undisciplined. Penalties on damn near every drive. Over 100 yards in penalties yesterday. Dak was awful. Turned the ball over several times. Had 2 interceptions called back by Green Bay penalties. He had an interception in the fourth quarter on an awful pass that was so far behind his intended receiver. If you didn't see the game, don't be fooled by Dak's stats or this final score. This game was never in doubt. Green Bay was up 28-3 in the second half. Unlike the Atlanta Falcons, the Packers don't give up a 28-3 lead. I'm starting to wonder if Cowboys owner Jerry Jones is a bit smarter than I've given him credit for. He's given out some bad contracts in his time in Dallas, but he's been real hesitant about committing big money to Dak Prescott. Now, if you've listened to this podcast, you already know what I think about Dak Prescott. I think he's highly overrated, and he's a mid-tier quarterback in this league. More of a Cam Newton or a Matt Ryan than he'll ever be a Brady or a Breeze. The media was all over this Cowboys team the first 3 weeks of the year. But I came on here every week and said, don't buy into this Cowboys team. Don't buy into this hype. I told you before the season began that I didn't think they'd make the playoffs. And I still believe that. Look what happened when they played 2 elite quarterbacks with good defenses. They got handled. The media was hyping Dak as an MVP candidate. Are you fucking kidding me? Why? Because he looked good against the Giants, Dolphins, and Redskins? 3 of the worst defenses in the NFL? Look what happened when he played Green Bay and New Orleans. He's thrown 4 interceptions over the past 2 games. This guy's not worth $30 million per year. I'll keep saying that until he proves me wrong. I think Jerry Jones knows this too, though. I think Jerry Jones knows this. That's why he's very non-committal on giving Dak long-term money. I also think Jerry Jones knows that Jason Garrett isn't the head coach that's going to take this team to the Super Bowl. I think that he was waiting for Sean Payton's contract to end in New Orleans, and he was going to make him a big offer to coach the Cowboys. Unfortunately for Jerry Jones, Gail Benson had other plans and wasn't letting the best coach in franchise history walk away, and she extended Sean Payton for another 5 years. I keep saying this over and over. All you have to do to beat the Cowboys is defend against Ezekiel Elliott. I told you last week the Saints gave the blueprint for the league. The Packers have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. They were gashed up the middle by Philadelphia the week before at home. Zeke had 62 rushing yards yesterday. The past 2 games, Zeke has combined for only 97 yards on the ground. The Cowboys are 0-2. It's just that simple. Take away Zeke, Dak is useless. And this guy thinks he's worth $30 million a year? Get the fuck out of here. Elite quarterbacks, guys who make that kind of money, they find ways to win games. You take away the run, they figure out a way to beat you with the pass. You take away the deep ball, they beat you with the screen. Whatever they got to do, they find a way to win. Dak Prescott doesn't do that. Russell Wilson finds ways to win games. Drew Brees finds ways to win games. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott does not. All right, that's it for the good, the bad, and the ugly for the weekend. No college football talk this week, but because honestly, there's nothing to talk about. I didn't feel like bitching again today about this lackluster college football season. I'm all bitched out right now about college football. At this point, I just could care less. Had a rough weekend with my college football bets, went 1-2. Really disappointed in the Auburn Tigers. Once again, Gus Malzahn and the Auburn Tigers find a way to lose a big game that they're supposed to win. Quarterback Bo Nix was dreadful in that game Saturday. Alabama, they played their toughest opponent of the year this past weekend. Rest. They had a bye week. The bye week was more entertaining than any game they've played this season. I was just happy not to have to watch that trash. NFL plays went 2-1 on Sunday. Still 2 games above 500 for the year in the NFL. Hitting right around 52% of my bets. My goal is to be between 55 and 56% by the end of the year. And that's attainable. Hopefully higher than that, but 55 to 56%, you're making good money. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure you click the notification bell on YouTube to get all notifications from the channel. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Leave a comment in the section below. I'll be back Friday morning with news from the week and my college football bets. Have a good week.